So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at a game called Red Menace. And this is designed by Brent Ward, and it is published by Battlespace Games. So this is the second edition of this game. It was, I believe, self-published by Brent a few years ago. And then he struck a deal, or it was picked up by Battlespace Games, which are a print-on-demand publisher. So when you get this game, it's going to have its laser cut counters that you need to have like dust a little soot off and have a great smell to them. And the cards are printed. The cards are actually really nice in this, and the artwork's very, very good. Is well quality printed. But know that that's what you're getting yourself into in a print on demand. They don't keep like reams and reams of this stuff in stock. As far as I know, it is like you order it and they print it and give it to you. So, Red Menace, World War III in 1959. So this is an air war game, generally speaking of like strategic bombing and strategic air defense. Both sides, you play as the US, UK, and Canada, and you are trying to, basically, in this game, like war has broken out, and you are trying to be the first one to nuke the other side out of existence. That's the goal of this game. So you have all of your bombers available to you in your bomber command, and it is send them all over to Russia, try to survive all the air defenses and navigate around those, and then drop as many bombs as humanly possible, and as such, do that to them before they can do it to you. Which is a pretty grim thesis, but it's also, you know, not inaccurate as to what was the thinking at the time, at least. And the one thing that I will say about this, and it's something that is noted in the rules, which I thought was interesting, this game is not necessarily an accurate historical representation of what was possible. It is an accurate historical representation of what the Allies thought was possible. And whether or not through misinformation or espionage or whatnot, it turned it out kind of in reality the Soviets didn't have this level of capability of high-level strategic nuclear-capable bombers. And so, but the defenses and the plans that were put in were done expecting the Soviets to have this scale of kind of a task force. Turned out, apparently, that wasn't the case. But it's interesting to play. This is very much a what-if, because not only like, well, what if it had kicked off? It's, what if it had kicked off at the level they thought that it was possible? Even though apparently it wasn't. So, you know, neat little thing, which normally isn't my style. I actually like playing things which, like, did happen. World War III, there's a lot of World War III style games, especially ones that are based in Germany, and that kind of stuff. So it was nice to do something that's World War III that isn't that, but also, you know, the game was very easy to get into and light enough where I wasn't, you know, it was easy to like, oh, I'm like playing the game. I don't have to get through a ton of rules for some simulation of something that never happened. I don't know what it is about me, but that's not my favorite thing to do. I'm happy to get into crunchy rules about stuff that did happen, and we're modeling this thing that really happened, as opposed to like, we're getting down into the weeds and it's 45 pages of something that like didn't even happen. But weirdly, sci-fi games I love. Anyway, that's a little bit about me. So, you've got the small little hex and counter display and a couple of different strategic displays flanking either side of them. And it's a light fare. I've heard this described of like, oh, it's more of an activity than a game. And I would say this is probably more of a game than something like The Hunters and Silent Victory. Those are very much like narrative style, almost role-playing games in them. You don't have a big decision space in any way. This one you have more of a decision space. Is it RAF or is it enemy action Ardennes? No. Does it pretend to be? No. Did I enjoy what I was doing in this? Yeah. Is it very straightforward? Probably, yeah, it is. But I had a good time with it. What I'll do is I'll show you how it works. That way you get a kind of a better gauge of what I'm talking about. And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. And I've got it under a plexi here, as you can see. Sorry about the awful glare in the corners. But it's actually 3 different kind of map cards. You've got the actual little hex map, and this is dual-sided. There is a black and white side to it, which I might whip out at the end. There's these two kind of displays. There's the Soviet display, which has all of their different flights on here, and then a couple of charts and tables. And then you have your the US allied, kind of US, Canada, and UK. You have your strategic bombing display. You'll have them based in various points on the map. And then again, you have a little submarine track and a couple of holding boxes for special aircraft that might come out. So these are, it's not one big sheet. These are 3 separate pieces. You can arrange them how you want. I just kind of crammed them under here so I could get them under this Snoplexi. And so, you know, if you're strapped for space, you can kind of move stuff around or all that. So no need to worry about that aspect of it. So the game itself is pretty rigid in its structure. What I mean by that is you've got a little turn phase down here, a little sequence of play, and you basically just kind of follow that in the same way that a lot of solitaire games are kind of structured in that way. And so you basically, in a turn, you're going to draw an event and do what the event says. It says, launch US refueling. So you've got this little refueling plane. You can assign it to an airbase. So you can assign it to any of these air bases. Stacking limit for this particular scenario is 3, so I'm going to stick it in Anchorage. And then it adds +1 movement to US bombers only. So that's an extra thing that you can have. Normally, you've got a printed movement on your bombers that you kind of have to adhere to. So you do an event, great. Then you're going to launch the next Soviet flights. All of our Soviet flights are either in the air or have already been launched. But what you would do is you would get the next alphabetical flight. You see it's A through J. You kind of pick the next one out. And then to base it, you draw a Soviet city card. This tells you it's going to be based out of Moscow. So you go here, we're going to stick it in the Moscow box. And then what you're going to do is you're going to assign that to what you've got here. So we've got our little dry erase marker, and this was flight E. So in the E row, what we're going to do is we're going to put Moscow is number 1. It's base number 1. Can I do this upside down? That's number 1. Great. Then what we're going to do is going to roll for the primary target. So we've got this little sheet of possible targets. We're going to roll a 6-sided die. So let's get our little D6 out. We're going to roll that. I rolled a 2. So you look here. 1, 2 is C. And C correlates to Gottab. I don't know how that's pronounced, but that's in Greenland. Well, Gottab's already been destroyed, so we're going to just roll again. And I rolled a 6. So we're going to look at the 6. And the 6 is T, which I think is also being destroyed. T, oh no, T is London. T is London, which is right here. Okay, so we're going to put that. That's our primary target is T. Good job, everyone. So it's you leave it empty. There's no planes in there. Basically, this is just a marker, and you don't fill this until it goes through your DEW, your detection radar screen, or if you get interceptors in there, that kind of thing. So that's we launched a new flight. Great. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move all of the Soviet bombers that are on the map. So G is headed towards N. N is Denver, so that's going to move here. And all of these flights have a movement of 1, basically. Then we've got this bomber is in Edmonton, or what used to be Edmonton anyway. This one's a special one that came out from an event. This is the M50. It's going towards P. P is Omaha. Normally this thing has a movement of 2. This is one of the few that can actually double move, so we're just going to move it there. And then the flight that we just put out is also going to move. So they're just going to move the 1 spot here as well. They're going to have to follow these red arrows. So it's going to kind of have to curl out and then fly back. And it represents the curvature of the Earth and to kind of funnel things into this strategic radar deployment, which is pretty neat. I like how that works. It's a really cute way of making the map actually a different shape than a rectangle. So that was very clever. I like that a lot. So having moved all of those, what we would then do is we would check for detection if any of our bombers had flown over the DW line or were on top of SAM sites or had interceptors there. Then you would draw random bombers from the cup, fill out 3 of them, and that's what would be there. None of that happened here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to launch any interceptors. So this is where we're going to kind of look at our interceptor display up here, and we're going to try to launch a bunch of fighters from Denver and Omaha to try and protect and shoot these guys down before they can drop their nuclear bombs, because obviously we don't want that to happen. So the problem is this is very late game. I'd finished this scenario and the US had won. You look over to your little flight display, we don't have any ready interceptors. All of them are in refueling or long-term refueling, so very, very bad. If you're attacking any of these Canadian places, like if we were attacking Edmonton, I could go to this Canadian pool and get those. If you're attacking London, there's all of these British-born RAF fighters that you could launch as well. So this is bad. These are basically going to be undefended, and it's very likely that those are going to be nuked. With the amount of bombers, it's hard to miss, basically. But let's just say, for the sake of example, we had a few of these. Let's say this stack of bombers was in here. I can basically launch as many fighters as I'm willing to commit to it. And so when you have a ton of flights out that are coming towards you, you can't, if you commit everything, then the next wave are going to be completely undefended because it takes a while to cycle through this refueling. And so you can either see through the number of spaces between them, you can try to math it out and be a bit gamey about it. That is something that you can do, but you do have to be careful about how much you commit and not over-committing. But let's say I've got this, G has only 1 bomber left in it, but I really don't want to lose Denver. I'm going to launch 3 fighters. You just kind of stick them on the map out of your ready box. And that's basically all that you do with those. And then what you're going to do is you're going to roll your defenses. So if, for example, this enemy flight is on top of a SAM site, you roll the SAM site's attack. If they're in a hex with the interceptors, you're going to roll the interceptors. So in this instance, this is the only one that we've got. We're going to roll these 3 interceptors. These are all the same. These are F-102s. Each of them has an attack value. And we have it says A4. You have to roll a 4 or more to score a hit. And they have a range of 0/1. So we're rolling at range 0. We're going to roll a 4+. So we're going to roll 3 dice. And we're trying to get a 4 on any one of these to shoot down the bomber in G. I could, this could be where I'm like, I want to shoot 1 here and 2 here, but for the sake of this, we're just going to roll the 3 on there just to make sure we get it. And I rolled 2 6s, that's great. And so this bomber from G is destroyed. He gets destroyed, he's removed from the game. And this flight is also removed from the game. It won't relaunch or anything like that. Good job. So you do all your defenses, shoot everything down that you can. Only after having survived that defensive fire will then the Russian bombers do their attack runs. So we've got this guy, he's going to attack, he's extremely fast, extremely deadly. He has an attack of 3. So it's extremely likely that he will hit. We're going to roll our die, get it in the dice tower. I rolled a 3, great, he succeeds. So he drops his nuclear bomb, we go to our little nuke cup, and we pull out one of these tokens. And this gives you a victory point value for it, so to speak. So this one is 5. We got 4s, 5s, 3s, 6s. There's a 10. We got a 10 for Kamchatka. That was amazing. A couple of them have a D6 where you roll a D6 value. For Washington and Moscow, the 2 capitals in the game, they have a 10 points plus D6. Those are extremely valuable targets, but do have inherent defenses. So that's it. This guy is then removed from the game. He's done his job. He scored the opponent AI 5 victory points. You mark it on the track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, the victory points are going to be in the scenario like, get 50 victory points or bomb 7 more cities than the opponent kind of a thing. So you're tracking your victory points here, and that's them. And then you kind of, the turn continues, but it flips perspective. Now, the US and the UK are going to launch their bombers. So if you've got bombers, we've got a bunch in Anchorage. we are going to launch them. Anchorage is up here, so we're going to stick them on the map. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move them all. So most of these bombers are very slow and have a movement rate of 1. So we're going to move a couple here. We're going to move them up. Move this guy. This guy's got a movement of 2. He's going to go doot down to Yakutsk. Move these guys up. Moving. You know how to move counters, right? Now, when they go through these air defense spaces that say 85, 85, all that kind of stuff, when a bomber goes into that, you're going to roll a d6. And on a 3+, I believe, a SAM site is there. Right here. And then, so we've done all our moves, and very similarly to how we launched our fighters and had that choice of commitment, the enemy SAM sites are all going to launch at everyone that's in range, and then the Soviets do have a pile of fighters that they can launch if you're over a city. So this guy is, for example, and you launch one fighter to match the number of bombers. So we've got one here, and we've got a guy on a SAM site here. So we'll just kind of do that. So this SAM site has an attack of 5. It's not very good. You roll it. Look at that. He scores the hit, shoots down the bomber. The bomber is gone. Great. That was very bad for us, because our bombers are so slow, and that's a guy we can't recycle. This dude here has a fighter. The fighter's going to try to shoot us down also. We rolled a 5. He has an attack of 3. I get shot down. Also very bad. This guy has a defensive value of -1. So this is actually a 4, but a 4 still hits. This guy has an attack of 3. But most of the bombers have a defensive 0. A couple of them have -1s for high altitude or fast speed, but most of that stuff's unmodified. So, you know, I thought I was going to get some good attacks in, but all of a sudden my, bombers have been shut down. That's fewer resources for trying to get these up. This looks like a lot, but you're going to get peppered to death through these SAM sites and fighters. So being successful and getting enough bombs dropped can be quite challenging in this one. But, very similarly, now that we've done all the air defenses, if I have any guys left, I'm going to roll my attack values to try and drop bombs on them. And then there's a little US submarine that can move around a couple spaces. And he has some Polaris missiles he can launch. You get like 2 of them in the game, and usually you use them up pretty early, then he just kind of doesn't do a whole lot other than detection. And once that's done, all your interceptors that fought, they go, and you stick them into your refuel rearm box so that they can sit there, and then during this phase next turn, they'll move into the ready box. So there's a whole turn where they are not available. And if you do long-range attacks, so some of them have a range of 0/1, this guy can attack people who are adjacent as well as in his hex. If you attack adjacent, represents they're actually flying over there, launching their missiles and flying back. All of that takes time, and as such, they go in this long section. And then during the next reset phase, this goes over here, and then this goes down here. So they're out for 2 turns if you do that. So it's powerful, but you've got to, they'll be out of action for much longer as well. And then you check for victory. That's it. That's what the game is. It is not a complicated game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not necessarily an easy game. You'll get hammered pretty early on in some of these scenarios by the Russians, and it's digging yourself out of a hole. You will suffer attrition in this. Can you get enough bombs dropped and get a couple lucky big draws? Like, this 10 was huge. If I didn't have had this 10, we'd have been in much more of a precarious situation in this game. So it's neat, it's enjoyable, and what I'll do is wrap up with some final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. As you can see, and go through a whole turn, not complicated. Now, the nice strategy comes in where to rebase your bombers, because once your bombers successfully bomb a place, they kind of warp back to the beginning, like a video game, and you can rebase them anywhere, and they can kind of go off again. So you get into some cool choices of like, can I get away with rebasing a ton of bombers at certain places that might be threatened by Soviet incoming flights. Because there was a time where I did that. I rebased a whole bunch of guys, and they immediately got bombed because an event gave the the Soviet bombers like an extra +1 move. And I thought I was safe and was going to have time to launch them. Nope, bombers come up on me right away, nuked the airfield, and everyone died on the ground. And so, the deck has a lot of kind of spanners that it throws into the works. So you do have to be careful about some of the things that you do once you've started kind of destroying some of these Soviet cities. You then start getting into like, what are these optimal routes that I can go through to avoid the harsher air defense systems? Because when you nuke a city, it becomes a wasteland. So they can trundle up these anti-air units, but it's a 5+ for that to show up, as opposed to the regular fixed emplacements are like a 3+ to show, much more likely. So you start getting into some movement shenanigans that you can play around with at the end. But the reality is it's moving these waves of guys forwards. You chuck dice to survive, you chuck dice to do attacks, and it's this race. You're trying to do it before they do it to you. Which, of all the games that I've played, where it's like a racing style game against an AI, most of them I very much dislike that style. But in this one, at least that race is both meaningful from a thematic standpoint, at least, and also like makes sense. Like, I've played other more Euro-style games where it's like, oh, you have to race against this other farmer who's growing more crops and it's going to flood the market. I'm still going to sell my stuff. Like, it's not very compelling. I'll put it that way. Whereas in this one, it's like, kill or be killed. Which, again, it's pretty grim. It's pretty dark. But, like, it makes sense. Like, they're sending waves of bombers to you. Their scores are racking up, and it is hurting your infrastructure. Your bombers are getting placed further and further back on the map, generally speaking. You have to it takes longer for them to get to the enemy now, and as such, they're sending more guys. It's a very, very interesting little system. And on top of that, you're cycling these interceptors. How much do I commit to this? How much can I afford to commit to this? Do I send in do I go all out with my Canadians? Then they'll be out for 2 turns, and I gotta pepper them with some US guys. Can I, how much all of my, RAF bombers got destroyed, and I'm like, that was absolutely killer. It was awful, because those guys are very close, and they could have been very powerful, but there is a neat little system of kind of resource management in those as well. So, all in all, this game the designer contacted me after watching our monthly debrief where it was about kind of air war games. He's like, hey man, I made one of these. And I was like, sure. And, it's a solitaire game and it's an air war game, both of which are kind of like big checks for me. And I had a blast playing this. I've played a number of, air war games, a number of solitaire games in there. And, this one doesn't pretend to be anything that it isn't. Like, Brent Ward, I think he's a software engineer. He does that for a living. He's not a game designer for a living. He's not trying to make it, in the big leagues and get rich off of this. He's like, it's just for beer money, and I'm happy to give him some beer money for this game. It was a good time. I enjoyed it, and I would play this again. Now, do I enjoy really deep, rich, crunchy solitaire games, things like Fields of Fire? Yes, I do like that. But this also has a place, probably in my collection as well. So, if you're interested, check it out. And if not, that's up to you. But I had an enjoyable time doing this. It's got some clever little systems in it, and it's one of those games where you can basically set it up and go. And I appreciate a game that can do that, because it just lowers that barrier of entry a little bit, and especially if I'm playing on my own, I don't want to be poring over a 40-page rulebook. Like, I do, and I enjoy some of those, but if I don't have to, big thumbs up. So, I had a good time with this one. Red Menace from Battlespace Games. Check it out if you're interested. Appreciate you tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.